Every day since 1965, our guest designer worked behind the high security doors of a design studio. Just imagine that, shaping the cars we would drive into the future and in top secret. What a job. Welcome to Shannon's Design to Driveway. I'm Warren Brown and I'm joined by motor historian David Burrell. Today we meet Holden's first ever Australian-born Director of Design, Phil Zmood. Phil Zmood was the first Australian to lead any design studio for any car company in Australia. From the very first Holden Monaro coupes and arguably the most elegant car ever designed in this country, the HQ series, and his iconic concept cars, Phil continued to showcase Australian design capability on the world stage. But perhaps his most important design was the Holden VN Commodore. Now his task was to reimagine Holden's large family car, which had become smaller compared to the Ford. The pressure on local production had already commenced, and getting the design right would be so important for Holden's local survival.
It came out of my interest in architecture. We had these overseas magazines come in, and I started looking at cars and trying to combine various designs from one manufacturer to another. And then I started to get more interested in actually the technical side and the design side of the cars, and wanted to find out more about it. And I entered the British Carriage and Automotive Association competition. I won a section of that and got some recognition. I went to the various car companies, mainly Holden and Ford in Australia, and talked to them. Holden's had a modelling and a design section that they were trying to build up. Ford didn't do any of that work in Australia. They mainly did engineering, execution of overseas designs, and also the people at Holden were very generous in their time and helping with materials, and they'd suggest things that I could design, projects I could take on, go away and do it. And Joe Szymanski called me in to have another chat to see if I was really interested in joining them. Well, we've got a new studio. You could start in there, familiarise yourself with what we're doing and the programs we've got going here. And Joe's main concern was that things were done well and done on time, but also they were done in a way that would satisfy his chiefs back in Detroit. And I went over to Detroit in '66 for a traineeship for a bit over 6 months, where you went around from studio to studio. I think I went to 5 or 6 studios. I was in Chevrolet, I was in the international studios they had at the time. I went to the Corvette studio. I went to Buick and Oldsmobile as well.
Monaro.
When I came back into Australia after being in Detroit, I started working on the detailing of the HKs, the HK Monaro, and had a little bit to do with the wheel covers and the ornamentation of the car.
Monaro by Holden, Australia's first sports machine. You can afford one.
We did a lot of different sketch themes for it, and I was fortunate that Chanella and Joe Szymanski thought the theme that I'd put up was the one that they were going to go ahead with, and they asked me to do a series of tapes and sketches to evolve that theme. The clear dart form and design of it and the sheerness of the surfaces set it apart. It has got very few gimmicks on it. It's very, very clear, strong graphics on the back, and the front was with the hidden lights, and that was all very contemporary for that time. The GTRX was an icon. It was Holden's chance to build a Corvette type car at low cost, but when they did all the sums here, they felt that it was still going to be too dear when compared to some of the imported sports cars, and that there was little chance of making money. But then the Datsun 240Z came along, and it was in the price range that we would have had to price it. So it could have gone ahead, and it would have been a marginal business case, but it certainly would have been a great halo product for Holden, and might have set us in a different direction.
How embarrassing for Chevrolet. Using just a 6-cylinder engine, the GTRX was faster than a Corvette. As Datsun showed with their 240Z, the GTRX was a sports car with global export appeal. Management got cold feet, maybe after a few phone calls from Detroit, and the opportunity to showcase Australian design, technology and capability, well, that was lost.
The HQ was Holden's opportunity to go into the next size, more formal family sedan with style, rather than just being a bread and butter type box type car. We wanted to introduce some of the flair and the Pontiac type flares down the side, which we developed and refined in a slightly different way, so people can say, oh, you copied this or you copied that. But we wanted to have those sort of muscle type forms on the sculpture of the side of the car and the stance of the car. The car was also influenced by the introduction in Australia of the Australian design rules. It was the A-pillars for the Kingswood and the Monaro, which were only about 2.5 inches in any direction. So when you were looking to the side or looking forward, you had this brilliant vision from the car. And that was one of the areas that I worked on in a lot of detail, as well as the surfacing of the car. I did this under the guidance and support of John Chanella. We were leading by bringing all the best of design concepts together. One of the themes there was influenced by Raymond Loewy's Studebaker coupes, and he had big wrap back windows, and I always thought that was one of the greatest cars. In fact, it was in the early 50s, was considered a milestone in design, and he got a lot of recognition for that. And I thought, well, it wouldn't hurt if we could get a bit of that flavour into the Monaro. We had to back that big window off. We had a faster sail area with a more sporty profile, more like the original HK Monaro coupe. At that time, the themes in the States, they were going to more formal upright D-lines, rear quarter window and the glass line around there. And so Joe Semensky said we better move in that direction. So reluctantly, we had to compromise, and we came up with a more upright profile. One of the issues that you have to face, that you're not designing cars for designers, you're designing them, your number one customer is the public, but the second customer is your management. And the second customer often has quite a big sway in which direction you end up with.
The HQ was a milestone car for Holden. Then there's the Monaro coupe. I reckon it's the most elegant car ever designed in this country.
The Green Lizard was an exciting project because it was to have GM's rotary engine, and in fact they were on their way, or 3 or 4 of them had arrived in Australia at the time we were about to release the body surfaces. It was primarily an evolution of the LH hatchback with a different rear and a more sleek no grille front, and from that the setback was that GM pulled out of the last minute of going ahead with rotary engines because they weren't performing the way they thought they should. We were very disappointed when it didn't go ahead, and then we never really got to show it to anyone. Mazda were looking for a large car. They were going to do a larger car of their own. They saw the HQ and they had discussions with Holden, and Holden said, yes, all right, we'll sell you some body kits that you can assemble yourself. Good recognition for the design of the HQ that Mazda wanted to use that body.
The Green Lizard, well, it's a tantalising insight into how Phil Smood saw the Holden Torana shape evolving to replace the larger Kingswood.
The LH Torana initial concepts were derived from the Opel T-car or the Chevrolet T-car that was going on. That was the initial thought, but Holden management and design had a strong belief that we could do our own car a little bit bigger than what they were proposing by using the componentry from the larger Kingswood HQs and HZ, those models that were around, and use the resources of the local supply network. There was a fair bit of resistance to that, but when Leo arrived here, he was enthusiastic about pursuing that direction. I was sent over to the States to work in their international studio on evolving the next iteration of the T-car, which may be a global Torana. I convinced the corporation they could make a proper business case out of going the initial thought, which was to evolve it from the main Holden program and previous Torana LC and LJ configurations. So the LH was born out of that, had the 6 and a 4. We had to accommodate those, but then as we were going to move into the racing with Bathurst and so forth, it was thought, well, we've got our own local V8, well, we'll put a V8 in it as well. It was the hero car, winning Bathurst several times and having outstanding straight line performance. In the late 70s, the fuel crisis came along. Ford chose to stick with their current manufacturing platform and just keep evolving and facelifting that car. And when Holden switched to the more of the Opel VB package, it was considered a bit too squeezy, and people moved over to the Ford.
You know, mate, you really didn't have to squeeze your family into that little car. Falcon alloy head 6. Ton of room, beautiful performance, an economy that makes some of your small cars, well...
Don't settle for less. Falcon is the answer.
The VB Commodore, well, you can debate about whether it was a smart move to downsize the Aussie family car, but as we know, buyers voted. If you wanted a large Aussie car, there was only one choice, the Ford Falcon.
So the only way we could get back was towards the VL period. We started to make it look bigger and externally and with colour and trim inside. And then we had the opportunity with the VN to actually get the dimensions right and give lots of leg room and space inside the car. That was a very difficult time because if you remember in the early 80s, a Holden went into administration, but we said if we didn't get the package right, we didn't give the market what they wanted, then we certainly weren't going to be able to return the company to profitability. And we, as a team, turned the company around about 18 months where the VN became the #1 seller, the car of the year, and the company was back in profit and set the foundation for the ongoing programs with the VT and the VE, and also gave us a lot of credibility on how to design cars on a very low budget, to the point where we had interest from the US for our people to show them some of the things that we had picked up to do small volume manufacture. The VN was the car that really set us back in the public's eye as the #1 contender. I think the form of the car was great for its time. It had that aero, sleek body to glass relationship and one form. It didn't have too many gimmicks on it, and we were visually trying to make it look big and we physically made it look big. But I think we were fortunate we got the support from the corporation, otherwise Holden might have disappeared even earlier than it has.
Most of us forget, in 1986, Holden were close to shutting down in Australia. $750 million in debt. General Motors had to bail them out. Holden desperately needed a car with space, styling and a powerful engine to match the Falcon.
I have the honour to have been the first Australian Director of Design was also very important in my career. It was the LH, because of the challenges, was a very important one to me because we virtually had a free go, and the HQ, especially the Monaro, was a real milestone for me. The soft cars, the kind of always had captured my imagination, and I think have got lasting power for their design from a historical point of view. Even though I might have been considered at times being a pretty tough person to work with, I'm very proud of the fact that many of the designers, including the current president of design in GM, were people that I selected and worked on my team, and have had some influence, significant influence in design, not only for GM but for other brands. And I've really enjoyed working with a lot of the younger designers. I played a major part from the beginning of '65. Well, the fact that I played her and in every model I had something to do with.
Thanks, David, and just a terrific celebration of an Australian designer who brought early experience from Detroit and then applied this to the battle between Holden and Ford. What we see in these designers is the ingenuity and capability of Australian designers to transfer their skills from sedans to coupes and from large to small cars. And whilst I love the HQ GTS of the 1970s, for me, Philsmood's GTRX Coupe was more than a concept car. It championed Australian car design with a leading edge that I think put Corvette on the back foot as a GM sports car brand. You know, so much of what we see at historic car shows each weekend owes a tremendous tribute to the work of Philsmood. I hope you've enjoyed our celebration of the legacy of Philsmood in this episode of Shannon's Design to Driveway. I know I did, and thanks for watching. In this episode, It's Leyland Australia designer David Hardy. We find out what really happened with the Leyland P76 and the Italian hatchet job on Australia's all-new family sedan. Plus, plans for a Bathurst giant killer, a V12 4.7 coupe.
Join Warren Brown and David Burrell in the new must-watch series Shannon's Design to Driveway. Watch now on the Shannon's Club.